Greetings, Productive Programmer, and welcome to the second module of this productivity course. I'm very excited to bring this part to you. This is the exciting part where we jump right into implementing the productivity system. So I'm excited to dive into that. But first, we have a little bit of theory to talk about. And I also want to get you thinking about why this is important. So how many hours a day do you think that you are productive? And the answer might surprise you. The reason I pose that question is because how many hours are you on email or task interruption where you have a coworker buzzing you on Slack and then you're changing what you were doing before and you're just kind of ping-ponging around from one fire to the next. So there's a lot that happens on the workday and a lot of interruptions. So how many hours per day do you think that you're actually productive? And actually, there's some studies that have looked at other people or at the workforce in general, and they found out what the average is, and we're going to get to that in a minute. But how many hours per day do you think the average person is productive? So the answer will surprise you, I think. And before we look at that data, just posing the question then, if you could be just as much or slightly more productive than the average person that works, would you be outperforming the competition? And I think that's a rhetorical question because, yes, if you could be more productive than other people out there on average, then you would be outperforming them, right? So you could be at par with them or more productive. And so I want to take a look at the data with you, and I want to show you how little hours you actually have to work per day to actually outperform the competition if you execute correctly. And by execute correctly, I mean focused type of work where you go in and you work on a focused deep work mentality. But let's look at the hours. Let's see this data first, and then we'll circle back to focused productivity work. So I have a couple sources here, and there's been a lot of research that's been done in this. But in an 8-hour workday, the average worker is productive for this many hours. And then, of course, we have to scroll down here and find it. But it says around 3 hours per day. So yeah, you're only probably productive for 3 hours per day. That's what they're saying. And it's just because of disruption, right? This is happening across the workforce. Employees are extremely unfocused. They're not focusing on one particular task. They're constantly being interrupted and jumping around or checking email or doing low productivity items. So the average person productive for about 3 hours per day. This isn't the only source either. I'll show you another research that's been done. So average office work productivity, less than 3 hours. So here, this study actually found 2 hours and 23 minutes each day. So that's assuming an 8-hour workday of office workers are generally unproductive for 5 hours and 37 minutes every single day. And there's a lot of employees that are out there that really they aren't interested in working either, right? Because they're working for somebody else and the other person's making money. I'm sure you've seen this before. You've seen other people that just are there to put it in their time and they're trying to just get their paycheck and they could care less. Unfortunately, that's the truth. Obviously, there's a lot of people that do care a lot and they try hard and they're just distracted or they have too many responsibilities and it's hard for them to really get down and focus on a particular task and really get as much done as they want to, right? That feeling of, oh, I always feel like I can never get done what I want to. And there's been a lot of studies actually. They believe that having a shorter workday would be more beneficial. So there's a lot of research that has shown that maybe 5 hours of workday would be better. And there's been some experimentation in other countries, and some particular companies have experimented with shorter workdays. Or the other thing that they've done is they've tried to make everybody squeeze in their 40 hours for 4 days instead of 5 days a week. And that's a whole nother kind of ballpark. But here we're really just focused on productivity. And the research shows that it's 2 to 3 hours. So going back to our slide, if you could be just 2 to 3 hours of focused deep work, you would actually outperform your coworkers. That's 2 to 3 hours that you could reclaim your mental health. And 2 to 3 hours is a really achievable goal, right? Can you basically shut down all distractions for 2 to 3 hours per day? And that can be broken up into 30 to 60 minute chunks, by the way. So as long as you are able to break those up, I do recommend hourly chunks. It makes it a little easier. So you could do 2 to 3 sessions of deep work. That doesn't mean it has to take over your whole workday. This is 2 to 3 hours that you'd be basically shutting off all distractions. And actually, what I recommend is 2 to 4. I say the range is 2 to 4 because if you want to outperform the competition, then you want to do more than 3 hours of deep work. So if you could put in 4 hours of deep work, you'd actually outperform the competition. So 2 to 3 hours, though, is what you would need to stay basically at pace with your coworkers. If you just did 2 to 3 hours of focused deep work every day and you went home, you would actually get as much work as they get done. But obviously, some of us are stuck in an 8-hour workday. So 2 to 3 hours of deep focused work can be really beneficial. And then the rest of the day, you can supplement with kind of like, okay, you're going to work a little bit on the lower productivity tasks. So maybe if you feel very productive at the beginning of the workday, you come in, you slam out 2 to 3 deep sessions where you just focus. And then you basically circle back to kind of like, okay, now I check the emails, I go to the meetings, I do the less productive work. But you already know that in the first 3 hours of the day, you basically outperformed all of your coworkers, which is pretty wild to think. And so, yeah, these 2 to 3 hours is of deep work. It's not busy work or other type of work. And so I call it focused work, but I know there's a lot of books out there that use the word deep work now. And it's kind of the same concept. It's just the concept of shutting down all distractions and basically just focusing on a particular task, or what we'll see, what I call pushes, which I'm going to come to in the future slide and in a couple slides from here. But now you know where the line in the sand is, right? You know that with just 2 to 3 hours of deep focused work, you can actually outperform the competition. And this allows you, one of the things that I kind of jumped over is reclaiming your mental health, because this allows you to know that if you can put in 2 to 3 hours of deep work, you can basically feel reassured that you have done your job for the day. You know that you've outperformed the competition. You know that you've done the same amount of productive work that your coworkers are going to do, and you can take a moment to just say, I've done it, like I can relax now. Like you can lose that feeling of like, oh, I always have more to do. There's always more. If you put 2 to 3 hours of deep work in, it's like, there's nothing to worry about. You know that you've done more. You've done at par or maybe more than some of your coworkers. And if you get up to 4 sessions or maybe even more, then you obviously are way outperforming them. And there's no reason that you should even question how well you're performing. So all you have to do, though, is to turn off your distractions for 2 to 3 hours a day, and you'll come out basically at pace or slightly ahead of those. And again, I do recommend 2 to 4, which is what you'll see in the coming slides, just to emphasize that if you want to outperform them, then you could go for 4 hours, right? But if you got this in, that according to the studies out there, you'd be at par with them. And again, you can break this down into 30, 60-minute chunks, so you don't have to work 2 to 3 hours deep work. You can basically break this up into hourly chunks is how I tend to do it. And then that way you focus for an hour, and you take a little bit of a mini break, and you come back, you bang out another hour. And then that's how you can kind of work really productive, and then you get little breaks in between. And so to emphasize on that, in our first lesson, we talked about optimal study, and I recommended how you could break this into up to a 45-minute session of focused study with 15 minutes break. Well, guess what? The whole reason that I taught you that in the first lesson was kind of like the Karate Kid, where like I make you put the coat on and everything, and you don't realize that you're learning, but you're actually learning that this is the same thing for optimal work productivity. So this is about the same thing as the optimal study session. It's 45 minutes of focused deep work with 15 minutes of review and organizing and taking notes and taking a break for yourself. And if you go for the hourly model, otherwise you could go with the 30-minute model. That's why I made these ranges of 20 to 45 minutes in case you want to do 30-minute chunks. I personally use hour chunks, so I'll talk about hourly chunks going forward. But you could do the same thing in a 30-minute chunk where you work 20 to 25 minutes, take 5 minutes to take some notes, take a quick break. You could do it that way. But yeah, so imagine that you just you work like this going forward, right? So this is the deep focused work for 45 minutes with a 15-minute of basically, this is where I'm leaving off at my work. This is what has to be done next. And then you go and you take a break, and then you come back, and then you can pick up where your notes are the next day or at a future session, and then you can continue on from there. And again, I highly recommend a timer. So this is the timer that I use, and you can use any timer, but you can see I set mine to an hour. I just usually use the top one. There's 2 timers on here, but you can just use anything really. This is like a $5 thing, and you don't need a timer technically, but I think that a timer is really helpful. So what tends to happen for me is I just set it for an hour, and then what I do is if I'm feeling like I'm starting to lose focus, I might glance at it, and if it's less than 45 minutes, I push myself to keep focusing. But if I start glancing at it and I'm like, okay, I'm kind of wrapping up on this task and I'm starting to like lose focus, maybe I'll glance at it. It's around 50 minutes, and I'll just go, okay, so I'll start wrapping up now. Otherwise, and then for those next 10 minutes, I'll wrap up, take the notes, take a quick break, reorganize, all that good stuff. Otherwise, if I zone out and all of a sudden it beeps at me that it's been an hour, then that happens about 50% of the time, and I'll just go ahead and do the wrap up there and initiate the break, and that's totally fine as well. So I just like to make it easy and just put 1 hour on the clock there. So this is everything that you're learning in this productivity system is not rigid, right? Because some people are going to have different scenarios. Maybe you like to work in 2-hour chunks. Maybe you like to work in half-hour chunks. This is all can be slightly modified or tweaked, but I'm going to give you like a template, and then you can take it from there and go. So I'll teach you my template of how I use it, but I definitely think you can tweak it or modify it slightly. And so with mine, hour-long sessions, and then 5 to 15 minutes post-work, mental break, review, taking notes, reorganizing stuff, or changing onto different push, which we'll get to that in a minute. So get in a timer, but again, not now. Deflect. So if you're taking time to learn this course, then hopefully you've learned by now that you are locked in, you're focusing on these lessons, and you know that, okay, you're gonna take anything that comes up in your mind, you're just gonna write down. So you're gonna deflect any distractions, right? And hopefully you've eliminated distractions prior to listen to the lessons or the work that you would engage in if you're doing optimal work productivity, such as this slide is showing. So again, then you would repeat this for 2 to 4 1-hour sessions per day. And you basically know if you got 2 hours in, you're pretty much close to most people's productivity. And that doesn't include the rest of the things you'll be doing out throughout the day, obviously. So that will, it just won't be focused work, but you'll still be getting some productivity done throughout the rest of the day. But you can see that according to those studies, deep focused work for 2 to 3 hours would get you right up to par with everybody else in the workforce, and you'd be working less hours technically. And if you go for 4 hours, so 4 1-hour sessions per day, again, you'd be outperforming the competition. So this is really groundbreaking. This is powerful stuff. If you think about it, you can really just go in, work, bang out your work day, and then kind of just take care of the little things throughout the rest of the day if you want to. Or if you own your own company, this is how you know you can basically get ahead. If you're able to push 4, 5, 6 of these on your own company, you could work less hours and be a lot more successful. Okay, so optimal work and study productivity. So work productively for 2 to 4 hours per day and study new skills 1 hour per day. So if you can work for 2 to 4 hours productively a day, and you can also study a new skill 1 hour per day, then your focused work plus your skill set will equal massive results. That'll mean you're more productive at the workforce, you are more talented and productive, and you'll be noticed. And just like we saw in the first lesson, you will become a bigger gear in the cogs, and you'll be more successful in your workforce. The reason that I say that studying new skills for 1 hour per day is your way to reclaim your power is because learning skills is going to pay you no matter where you go in life. And your employer that you work for now, should something happen, they can never take this power away from you. If you're constantly putting in 1 hour per day to improving your skill set, you're always going to have the power to go and find another job, another situation, another source of income. And they're never going to be able to take that away from you. But if you let them consume your 8 hours a day and you don't allow them to, you allow them to sap out the 1 hour of improving your skill every single day, whether that's before you go to work, or you sneak it into work somehow, or you sneak it in afterwards. As long as you're able to do that, you reclaim your power. But you don't want to let that 8-hour workday sap away your power of not improving your skill set. You need to always be doing that. So next we're going to go into organizing effectively, and we're going to see how you can effectively organize your skills and your work. So now let's talk about organization. We're going to focus on organizing our work and our study, and organization creates the goals and the focused direction that we're going to go in. So traditional to-do lists just typically don't work. If you've ever tried one, I'm sure you have. Basically, too much stuff ends up in one list. What you actually want to do is you want to break those to-do lists out into multiple to-do lists that are organized by what you're trying to push forward in your organization or your work. So that's why we're going to break those out into what I call pushes. So the idea here is, to summarize what we've talked about so far, you want to try to have 2 to 4 hours of deep focused work at your workplace to basically outperform the average person in terms of productivity. And additionally, we talked about a minimum of 1 hour study to improve your skill set. Those would be things that you would want to make as drivers for yourself. So in the workforce, if you want to have 2 to 4 hours of focused work, we want to put those into pushes. So pushes are things that you're trying to push forward. They're like drivers in your organization. And so some examples of things that you would typically be trying to drive forward in your organization would be things like support tickets. You have to grind through those and get those done. You need to drive forward and push those along. You have QA and code review. You need to push that along. You need to get those done. Coding, you need to keep pushing code and getting things done. And then the list can go on. These can break out into anything that you're really trying to push forward and get done in your organization. Those can become pushes. And you can even go so far as, not to make it too confusing, but if you're coding and you had like a huge major new application you were going to build, and that was just like a huge focus, you could separate that out into its own push. And these pushes for your work can basically always be dynamic. So you can always modify this. So if next week support tickets aren't important, you could remove that from your pushes. Anything that you're pushing is things that you're pushing right now. So this is dynamic, and they'll be growing and changing as you go. But basically, you typically have a lot of things going on in a work organization. So a to-do list is not really easy. Typically, you have major drivers in your business that you're trying to push forward, or in your startup, and you want to break those out into what you're trying to push forward. So what are the various things that you're trying to push forward? Because typically your time is split between those tasks. So the goal here is to spend deep focused work on each one of those things that you're trying to push forward. And then you would break up that 2 to 4 hours of focused work that you're trying to push forward into those pushes. So maybe you would do 1 hour session in coding, and you can actually do in 2 half-hour sessions, or you could basically work for 1 hour but break up half of it into QA and code review and half into support tickets if you wanted to. And then you could come back and push another full hour into just coding. And so you can get really creative with this, but basically the goal is that for 2 to 4 hours a day, you are doing deep focused work, and then you can basically pick from which of the things you're trying to push forward, and you can focus on one of those activities while you're doing your deep focus work. And that way you drive and you push forward the work that needs to be done for your organization or for your startup. And as a bonus, you can actually apply this to your own life or even your side hustle as well. And so imagine what just 1 to 4 hours per week on other areas in your life can do if you did focused work on those areas. So 1 hour on a side hustle, for example, initially that might not have a whole lot, if you were just to do 1 hour on a side hustle, but imagine doing that every single day, and you'll actually find that you'd have really drastic results over the long term. And so you can build this out. You can build out this type of structure for this productivity system for your work life and your personal life, or your startup, or both of your personal life and startup. in addition to your work. And so you have a lot of options at your disposal. But for example, in your personal life, some things you might be trying to push forward are home improvement projects. So maybe you have a home improvement section with all the tasks that need to be done around your house. Spending personal time with your spouse, significant other, or your kid, so your son or daughter. So maybe you want to make sure that you're put in deep focused, you're pushing to have that quality time, right? So you're setting aside an hour of undistracted time where you're just playing with them or spending with your significant other. These can be things that you can actually do, and obviously that would make a drastic impact if you were doing 1 hour of any of those on a daily basis. And again, this is 1 hour. If you were just to do 1 hour per day on one of those pushes, and every single day you switch which push you're doing. So, Monday you're pushing on home improvement 1 hour. Tuesday you're pushing on your spouse 1 hour focused. Wednesday you're focused on your kids for 1 hour. I mean, that is huge. You're only spending like an hour of undistracted time on each one of the things that you want to push forward in your life. But if you do that, and you're going to get so much done. And you can see how you don't have to do the same push every single day. These can change. And the same is true for your work, right? You could do 4 pushes on coding on Monday, and then on Tuesday you could do 4 pushes on QA if you wanted to. Or you can break it up. You typically, because of your work duties, you tend to have to kind of do a couple of them in a day. But this allows you to at least kind of choose and organize. And depending on the demand, you can kind of gravitate to the one that needs the most attention and put more pushes on that in a very dynamic nature. So that's what's great about this system. So enough talk about it. I hope that it hasn't been too overwhelming. It's going to make a lot more sense. It's a really simple productivity system, and it's an actionable system that you can get up and going with quickly. And when you see this, which I'm going to show you next, I think you'll agree that this is just a really great thing. And I'm also going to show you how to do this in Notion, which is a free application that you can take advantage of. It has a desktop and a mobile app, and it's a favorite of it's one of the favorite dev tools worldwide. I'll show you. So I'll show you here. If you take a look at Notion, it's actually the #1 most loved asynchronous tools that teams are using for productivity tools. So this is being used by professional developers, and you can see that it has it has the highest over all of these other workforce type of productivity tools such as Trello or anything else. Notion is the most loved. And so that's the tool we're going to use, and it's free, and it's going to allow us to implement this productivity system that you could do it without Notion, and I'll show you how to do that as well. I mean, the way that you would do it would be that you would just basically, you could have files on your computer that would be broken up into different pushes, and you could put your notes inside of there of all of your to-do list items. Or you could even just use a notebook, and you could write down on different pages each one of your pushes and then take tasks and notes in there. But I think that it's a lot more efficient, and you'll see. Let me go back to full screen. But yeah, you can see it's a top favorite of dev tools worldwide. And so you don't need Notion. I used to do this and implement this just in files on my computer in different folders, and that worked for me for a long time. And then I figured out how to put it into Notion, and that's worked phenomenally for me. So I think you're really going to enjoy using Notion. There's no reason not to, because it's a free. So you can obviously do this on any way that you prefer. But let's jump into it, and let's take a look at how this actually gets done. But what I'm going to do is, because you may want to in the future come back and check out these videos, I'm going to leave this video as being the theory part of things. So this video kind of serves as the theory of this productivity system, and then I'm going to make the next video will show you how to use this system in Notion. It will give you an actual feel of how this works. I think you're going to love it. When you see it, it'll make a lot more sense, and you're really going to like it. And then the third video that I'm going to do will be how to set it up in Notion. So that way you have all these videos separate. So in case you ever want to see the theory again, or you want to see it in action, or you just want to see how to set it up again, you have all videos separate so that we can just jump right into what you're looking for easier. So to summarize this lesson in the theory then, basically what we want to do to make this productivity system work is there's a couple pieces, and that is 2 to 4 hours per day is necessary of deep work to outperform at your job or your company or just in general. And then 1 hour of skill improvement minimum you should be investing in yourself, because that's your way to reclaim your power. Then nobody can ever take that away from you. You'll be skilled, you'll be valuable, and you'll have proven yourself from your previous productive achievements, from your 2 to 4 hours of deep work at your past sessions of work. So I mean, your focused work plus your skills equals productivity. And then we talked about how we're going to organize our goals into what we call pushes. These are all of the different things that we want to push in our life. And we're going to use Notion to keep everything organized and at your fingertips and make it easy. And then, of course, you could just do this manually, but I'm going to show you how to do it in Notion. And I think you're going to love it because, again, it's free. And so in the next video, we'll take a look at how this works in action. We'll take a look at how this simple productivity system works when all the gears are grinding.